Bamboo podcast, where we chat to a range of guests on self-care, infant care, and relationships. We are your hosts, Kayla
and Leah.
In today's episode, we speak to Sabrina McKenzie, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne in music psychology. She's also a songwriter, performer, and mother of three.
I was excited to interview Sabrina to see how I could get more music listening into my family's life, but also because my master's thesis that I'm currently trying to complete is about how music listening during the perinatal period supports women's well-being. Sabrina discusses self-compassion and the 3 types of self-compassion, in particular, common humanity, which is a shared experience. And it really defines the purpose of why we wanted to do this podcast, to improve connectedness and reduce isolation for women before and after birth. We really hope you enjoy, and this podcast brings a little bit more music into your life.
Hi, Sabrina. It's fantastic to have you on the Bamboo podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. And thank you for having me.
So we'll just start off with what is self-compassion?
Sure. And I think a good way to look at self-compassion is to ask the question, have you ever been your own worst critic? I guess a lot of us, when we make a mistake or we're down on ourselves, we can tend to dwell on all the things that we've done wrong. And that's a place where self-compassion can come in. It's a concept that has been around for many years in spiritual and traditional spaces, but in more recent times, it has become a focus of a growing body of research. And so self-compassion in research is mainly focused the research is mainly focused on the teachings of Dr. Kristin Neff. And so she looks at self-compassion in 3 key areas. So there's self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. And so self-kindness is all about treating yourself with the same warmth, kindness, and love, I guess, as you would to a friend that's going through a hard time. It's kind of like acknowledging that you're not perfect and that's okay. And when we make mistakes or we face hardships, self-kindness involves responding with compassion and forgiveness rather than those harsh judgments or evaluations. And then we've got common humanity, and that's all about that shared human experience. So when we go through hard times, it's so easy to feel isolated or alone. And the reality is we all go through hard times in our lives. And once we remember that we're part of this larger community of people that have faced similar struggles, we can then feel less isolated and then in turn more connected with others. And then there's mindfulness, and that's all about staying present in our thoughts and feelings without over-identifying them and identifying with them. And so these 3 key areas, self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, they're intended to offset negative consequences. And so they do this by focusing on their opposite positive counterparts. So for example, there's self-kindness versus its opposite negative counterpart, which is self-judgment. And then there's common humanity versus isolation, and then mindfulness versus over-identification.
Oh, this is so good. I love this. Thank you. I'd actually never realized that self-compassion was divided into those 3 topics. I was wondering, as you were speaking, how does it relate to mental health?
Yeah, so I guess individuals who develop attitudes of self-compassion, they are better equipped to cope with suffering and hardship with kindness and compassion while still maintaining this sense of shared humanity.
And we know that new parents are particularly vulnerable to experiencing those mental health issues. So actually around 1 in 4 mums experience significant emotional distress. So how can new mums, who are often very hard on themselves, integrate self-compassion into their daily lives?
Yeah, my research doesn't specifically look at new mums, but I can definitely speak from a personal perspective. When I first became a mum, I've got 3 kids. I've got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I say 2-year-old because he's very 2 at the moment at that stage. But when I first became a mum to Scarlett, who's now 8, I remember feeling quite isolated in my experience. And I don't think anything could have prepared me for the challenges that it was going to bring, no matter how much I was told or no matter how much research or classes that I did. And I think one thing I really lacked in that time was that sense of common humanity, that shared human experience. I felt like I was failing at times, especially in those first 4 weeks where I was not getting much sleep. I was very harsh on myself, very judgmental on the way that I was mothering. And I feel like these key points of self-compassion that I'm working on myself now, and I have since I've been diving into this research. It's elements that I really could have brought into that time when I became a mom, and to understand that, it's my own personal journey, and lots of people are going through very similar struggles, and that I'm not alone as well.
I think it's great that you talk about still going through this journey. So your oldest child is 8 years old, but it's still something you're actively working on, which is great that it's not, you're not going to get to this amazing point of self-compassion. It's going to be constant work.
It's such constant work, definitely. And definitely, I think it changes as well over the years, but also with each child journey that I've had with each of my kids has been quite different too. And I feel like bringing in that self-kindness and just remembering that it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's how we deal with those mistakes and how we process them and learn and move forward is the bigger key. But yeah, it's definitely a process that develops over the years and keeps developing.
And keeps developing. That's right. I have 3 kids myself, so I completely get what you're saying there. With each child, it is a different process, and you're in a different stage of being a parent, but how you really talk to yourself is so important. And I love that. I constantly kind of think to myself and tell others, would you say that to a friend?
Yeah.
Having that internal understanding of like, oh, that was harsh. I would never say that to another person, but why do I then allow myself to say that to myself?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because that's actually the first piece of feedback that I got when I was a first mum from my best friend. She said the exact same thing back to me. She said, would you say that to me if I was going through the same thing? I'm like, hell no, I would not. It's such an eye opener. We're so hard on ourselves, and just stepping back and bringing in that kindness, because we need it too for ourselves as much as we're giving it to other people. Yeah.
I also love how you were talking about taking the time to acknowledge that it will be the case, that you won't be fully prepared no matter how much you do beforehand, and being able to sit with that and be comfortable with that as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because everyone's experience is so different as well, and you're only on your own journey. And I think motherhood, it's so different for all of us, and we experience it. So like we never know what we're going to get, especially with our babies as well. And it's such an unknown experience. And I feel like I would step back and tell myself that it's okay to be in that unknown space. It's okay to be in this journey. It might not be cookie cutter like what you've looked at in a book, and it's okay to sort of step out of those lines. But yeah.
And coming to your experience with music and background in that, how can we use music to cultivate self-compassion?
Yeah, so we're looking at a few different studies at the moment, which is part of my PhD. And the first study was really looking at if music listening can cultivate self-compassion. And a lot of the responses that we have been getting from our participants in the study really leans towards that common humanity piece, that shared human experience. A lot of participants are saying that they listen to music to be able to acknowledge and feel their emotions, and to be able to have that cathartic release after, to allow themselves to experience kindness and compassion. A lot of the responses too are coming out about relationship breakups. I guess one of the things a lot of people do when they break up with someone is listen to breakup songs, and just to feel connected with someone else that is going through the similar experience, or to be able to connect with themselves and to let those emotions out. But music can work in a lot of ways to help us be kind to ourselves, to also feel connected with artists, or just to feel that shared human experience as well, and to be mindful and to be in the present moment.
Sabrina, when we're thinking about using music to cultivate self-compassion, is there something everyone can do, or does it work better for some relative to others?
Yeah, I think it's quite subjective. Everyone experiences music in different ways. I was speaking to someone recently about heavy metal music, and they were asking, is it only those positive up tunes that cultivate self-compassion? And I feel like, these positive anthems are great for self-compassion, but there's also space for sad songs. And then that's actually coming out in the research as well for sad music, heavy metal music that we were speaking about, that I was speaking to this friend about. And anything that allows you to feel. And we all experience these emotions in different ways, and we all gravitate to different types of music as well. And so as long as we're listening to music that allows us to feel those emotions, and to like what some responses are saying, after that process they're able to have this release to allow that self-kindness to come in.
I can definitely get that though with the heavy metal or like rock music, being able to really like release and get rid of maybe some of that underlying frustration or anger that you might be feeling like. And it's that any music that you kind of gravitate towards that really makes you feel the emotions but connect with others.
Yeah, definitely.
What happens if music causes you to ruminate or brings up some really hard times that you've had in life? Like, what can people do?
Yeah, so I guess music, it's kind of like, it can have these positive sides, and it can also bring up, it can stir up negative emotions or hard memories as well. Music can catch you off guard. Sometimes you might be listening to a song that usually makes you feel okay, but it could be triggering. Sometimes it could take you back to a space where you weren't as happy, or and so yeah, just to be aware of yourself. And I guess that's where that self-compassion piece can come in too, is being self-kind, or sitting in those moments, but also realizing that you can step out of them as well.
Yeah, and absolutely, as you said, if you're having a difficult time stepping out of it, even once you've changed the song, perhaps, then it might be time to reach out to someone and get some help as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Sabrina, I was wondering, like, how did you use music while you were pregnant, and like what kind of benefits did you see from using music?
I use music quite a lot to regulate my emotions. It's been something that I've used ever since I was a child. And so using music in my pregnancy was a very regular practice of mine. But mainly I remember in my third pregnancy. So when I was pregnant for Sunny, it was during COVID. It was during that amazing year that 2020 was. And it was quite an isolating pregnancy. And I was really, really ill during that pregnancy as well. And I would use, there was this one song that I'd use, that it was Yola, Hold On, and it had these beautiful lyrics about, Mama said to me, hold on, you got to be wise, hold on. And I felt like through this song I was connecting to my mum, who I couldn't see during this amazing time in my life that she couldn't be a part of. And she only lived 20 minutes down the road, but I still couldn't see her. I felt connected to myself in hold on. It was this song that I feel like was the theme song of Sunny and I, because it was the first song that I then showed to him when he was born. And it's a song that he kind of knows the words to now. It's been, I use it, I guess, as an emotional release. I feel like music can allow me, it's kind of like the words to my emotions. It allows me to be able to express myself in a different way. And I love when an artist is able to do that for me. I'm a songwriter as well. And so I use music to let my emotions out on the paper, like writing lyrics down and playing them to music. But I also love connecting with an artist that has put it in such a different way, and having that connection to with a different songwriter. And I feel like that's what I used quite a bit when I was pregnant. Not so much the songwriting element, but also connecting just to different artists.
And I wonder, like, that song takes you back to being pregnant, and it's obviously a bonding experience for you and Sunny. But I was thinking as you're speaking, like, imagine in 10, 20, 30 years time, where kids are growing up and they've left home, and you listen to that same song again, and it would just transport you back to that time.
You just gave me goosebumps. Yeah, definitely. And it kind of does that already. And I know it's only been 2 years with him, but that song is, it's such a Sunny and I song. And I feel like even if we let it go, and if years down the track, it will bring me back, straight back. I know music does do that for me. There's a specific song that we played at my brother's funeral. He passed away when he was 9, and we played this song. It was Tina Arena's Now I Can Dance, to walk him out with, because he had a really, really hard childhood and he couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair. And so it was quite a beautiful song for our family to think, like, now he's free, like, he can dance. We brought him out, walked him out of his service with that. And it's that song now, it's so many years ago, every time it comes on, it takes me straight back to him. And it's a beautiful memory as well. It's a memory of him being free. And it's I think music can do that. Just, it brings you straight, it transports you straight back into this time. It's quite a powerful tool.
That's really beautiful. And that you made that sort of positive association, even though you were listening to it at maybe a trickier time. And I think that's really awesome to hear for new mums who maybe are struggling a little bit with their pregnancy, but they can still have this release of emotion and positive associations with music, even if it was sort of a more challenging time as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And we're thinking about new mums. So you've used music since you were a child for that emotion regulation purposes. And I think most people do have a connection to music, but for mums who maybe don't use music as frequently, what would you suggest to sort of start integrating that, using that for emotion regulation during their pregnancy?
Yeah, I think the first part is that self-connection piece. One thing for me, when I became a mum, is I kind of lost my identity a little bit, and listening to songs from my childhood, or listening to songs growing up, or some of the songs that reminded me of my friendships, kind of made me feel more connected to myself. Just going through that back catalogue of your own sort of soundtrack, I guess, just to reconnect to yourself, and to allow to see what sort of emotions come up as well through that memory process. It was a great tool for me to remember who I am, and that I haven't lost that. I'm just developing. I'm adding more on rather than losing anything. And so that self-connection piece through music was a really big thing for me, going back and discovering the songs that I loved, and the songs that brought back those memories of happy times, connecting back to myself.
That's really beautiful. I was thinking also with that partner relationship. So if it's your first child, you might be feeling a bit disconnected from your partner. You have this new, maybe this is now the most important thing, right? This is your child. But maybe thinking of the wedding song, or perhaps just songs that are meaningful within your relationship, would be a way to connect, during this new experience of pregnancy together, and that changing dynamic between the three of you.
Yeah, definitely.
As you were
Yeah.
speaking and going back to friendships and things that had happened previously, it reminded me that at the moment I've got a 10-year-old son, and just introducing him into that music that you listened to as a teenager, like he's getting really into AC/DC, he's like loving the Rolling Stones, like Offspring, Red Hot Chili Peppers. And it really takes me back and thinking, and it reminds you of the friends that you hung around with at that time, and just seeing his appreciation for it.
And it's that nice connection piece too with your child, like having that connection and having that shared connection, because it comes in two parts: that connection that you're having, and then the memories that you're bringing forward, but also having that connection, then bringing it with your child, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was wondering, how do you use music now as a family?
We use music quite a lot. My husband is also a musician, so I kind of live vicariously through him at the moment, because I haven't performed in so many years since I've had kids, and he still does. But we're both musos, and we've always wanted to instill that again with our kids. And my two younger girls have just started learning piano, and I've heard them write their own songs, but when they're writing their own songs, it's always about their emotions, and really about their days, like, I've had a bad day, or like it's very to the point. But we have Friday night. It might sound really corny, but we have like Friday night jams at home. It's the only gigs that we can get to now as parents. So we have sing-offs where the girls will write their own songs and bring it to the table, and we'd sort of like work them out. And we use music quite a bit, but also it kind of is a routine for us when we look at listening to music too. Music's always on in the morning while we're having breakfast. It's always on in the background when we're having a dinner, and it's always something that we fall asleep to. We use calming meditation music for the girls when they go to sleep. And so it's very much part of our lives, both playing and listening.
I'd love to come to your jam nights on a Friday night. It sounds like so much fun.
Fun, but sometimes it doesn't sound so great. So
We sometimes have jam sessions at our house that involves a recorder from a 6-year-old. And then that recorder goes missing for a good month.
yeah, good. Yeah. I think I might have one in my cupboard.
There's only so many times you can listen to hot cross buns.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, such a fantastic talk. Thank you so much, Sabrina. It's been really enlightening, like on how music can be implemented within your family. But I love that piece around when you're pregnant, it's already a way that you can start to bond with your baby.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.